part 2, we're going to be working on the reflection of the bulb itself. We're going to add in our values and get the dark part of the glass while leaving the whites of the page for the highlight and also the reflective highlights. We're going to start by lightly sketching the inside of the bulb. The reason we're going to sketch it light is we're going to do this last, so if you do want to blend the values, it won't smear what we've done already. I'm just sketching this very lightly. It's just giving me a guide of where everything's going to be once we're done shading the outside, the glass portion of the bulb. This is all done very lightly. I'm just going to put it in so I can see where I'm going to avoid adding the shadow, since most of this stuff, it will be the white of the page. The next step is defining the shapes that are going to be left the white of the page. I'm probably drawing these a little darker than I usually do, but I want to make sure you guys can see where I'm putting these in. These lines don't need to be perfect. I'm doing them light enough that I can erase them if there's little mistakes. And also, I'm going to end up shading over a lot of this, so these lines will disappear. Look closely at your photo reference and you'll see these shapes that are defined in the reflection. Some of them are very subtle, but if you zoom in on them and focus on them, you'll be able to see them in there. I'm just going through and I'm redefining the dark portions of the outside of the bulb. If you look at the photo reference, there's a portion that is going to not have that dark highlight around it. That edge is going to be defined by the value of the background. So you're not going to do a crisp dark line all the way around. Now I'm going to go in and I'm going to start shading in the areas that are going to end up having the darkest value. I'm using very tight lines and circles to fill in the value here. I'm not doing huge lines, I'm not racing to get it done, and I'm putting very little pressure on the pencil. You can see I'm holding the pencil on the back to slowly build up these dark values in here and around the top edge down to this line. I'm basically using the weight of the pencil for the pressure put on the paper. I'm not drawing this in dark. I am building the value very, very light. And I'm drawing light enough that I'm able to go in, I'm able to erase those lines and not have them visible anymore. Again, I want you to take your time with this It's a slow process, but the more time you take, the better the result is going to be. You should be able to go over this several times and slowly build up the value. If you go too dark, it's harder to fix. Again, I'm only going over the portions of the drawing that are going to end up being the darkest of value inside this bulb. I'm avoiding all the other spots for now until I can build up that darkest value. The main thing to remember while we're working on this, none of the value that we're adding in the bulb part of the light bulb is going to be nearly as dark as the darkest values we've already done in the threads and the base of the light bulb. It's a slow process, but if you work on light levels and slowly build the value, the result is going to be much more enjoyable to the eye than if you just go in and put in this dark value right away. If you have your photo reference out, make sure you're looking at that. If you're following me, that's fine. I'm not doing exactly what the photo reference is. Some lines might be a little different, and that's okay. I just want you guys to get the general idea of how to recreate these reflections and shadows. Now I'm going to start going over everything that I've already done, and I'm going to slowly start building up that value. So I start by going over the dark portions of the edge, and then I'm going to go in the dark portions of the reflection and slowly build those up. When you slowly do this, you can see mistakes coming before it's gone too far and you have to try to use your eraser to fix things. This way, if you make a little mistake, it's easy to cover up, and sometimes you don't even need to erase things. So now using the photo reference, I can see the areas that are going to be a little darker inside that darker area, and I can slowly build those up. Again, our line should be light enough that we can go in and erase lines and nothing should be visible underneath where we've worked. So once we get all our values added into the darker areas, we can start building in value into the lighter areas of the bulb. So once again, I'm just drawing really light using just the weight of the pencil, and I'm slowly building up those secondary values. I'm working my way around the inside portion of the bulb. I can shade over these areas that are going to have dark lines in them, but I want to avoid these areas that are going to have the white of the page, and then these darker lines on the outside, I can just draw over those at the end. So you have to remember to leave this area lighter on the edge of the bulb. That line's going to be defined more by the background and the shading inside, so we want to leave just a sliver of the white of the page to differentiate those two values. We want to slowly build up this value because if you do shade this in too dark, it won't look like a transparent light bulb and it'll ruin that illusion of realism that we're going for. And now I'm just going back over some of the dark parts that I've worked on, just adding more value to darken it up a little bit. And then I'm going in, I'm just looking at some of the details in the photos and looking for kind of some subtle shapes that are in there. And I'm just trying to bring those out a little bit. Now I'm just kind of going around and just finding areas that need to be darkened up a little bit. Mostly areas around the reflective highlights or the highlights, just to bring those out a little bit more. Always refer to your photo reference and just find those shapes that seem to come out as you work. If you zoom in, you can start to see where areas are lighter and darker, and then since we're adding value so slowly, it's easy to get those shapes to appear. When I'm going back over these areas, I am barely applying pressure with the pencil and am just filling in some of those gaps in between lines that I may have missed the first time through. I've done a pretty good job so far of keeping my hand off the page and not smearing any of the work I've done. But once I go in and I start adding some of the detail in on the inside of the bulb, I'm going to go ahead and just put a paper towel down so I'm not smearing the stuff I've already worked on. So the last thing you're going to do today is you're going to go in and you're just going to kind of redefine those lines that are the inside of the bulb that we started our sketch with. Just get those lines in light and then we'll work on that in our next video.